Hi everyone. So a few hours ago, Blizzard has dropped this new blog post here, and they've also announced the next developer livestream. And both of these dive into the endgame. So there are not really like any real groundbreaking news, but there are definitely a few new details that are worth discussing and that I also had a chat about on stream earlier. So I figured we can go into the details here as well. I have the links for you to all of this in the description, so you can go check those out. They have released this video here, and it's just like a 6 minutes, like basically overview of the different endgame systems. So we know about the different types of content, like the PvP and the nightmare dungeons and the hell tide, and I have not really shown that much of it. But there are definitely some points of contention here, especially the Paragon boards, which we have somewhere here, and also the respeccing costs. So I want to go a little bit into that detail here. So this is how a Paragon board looks these days. This has gone through various iterations. We have seen this in older blog posts and other stuff. So the basic concept of these Paragon boards is that you have a bunch of points to spend. So you can see this here in the top left corner. The available points, it's going to be like somewhere like above 200, 220 or so, because you get 4 points per level starting from level 50 and finishing at level 100, plus a few more from Renown. So you're going to have something like 220. And you have these different Paragon boards that you attach. You can also rotate them. So you can rotate them around if you want, like this, and attach them in any rotation that you want. And then you have these gates here where you attach new Paragon boards. So you have to path through them. For example, here they're coming from the bottom. And then, you know, they pathed all this way here. Went to the legendary node. So there's always like a big node on each of those boards. And there are various other nodes like the magic. So you see here, this is like the blue colored ones. And then you have the rare ones. So there's a bunch of these like spread out all over the place, here and here and here, and then somewhere here probably, and a few more there and there. And it seems like a lot of people are actually very unhappy with the system, looking at yeah, the like-dislike ratio here on this video. And yeah, the comments that yeah, mostly ramble about yeah, this Paragon being like, you know, basically like a Diablo 3. But I gotta say, this is absolutely not the case. So if you are not aware of how this works, is that this is actually a way more complicated system than basically anything we've seen like that in the other Diablo games. And I think that a lot of people definitely get some rough awakening once they reach level 50, 60, 70, and you have to start assigning those points. Personally, from doing my own theory crafting, I gotta say that this is definitely something that will keep you occupied outside of the grind itself, actually optimizing this whole thing. You can also see like the glyphs here on the side with the different options. There's like over 20 glyphs or so they can actually put here that are, yeah, probably a bit like legendary gems, I guess, in Diablo 3. And you can also put them into the socket slots. So there's always like one socket on each of those boards, one legendary node and a socket. And you have to decide where to path, what to take, where to put the next boards, and so on. So this +5 main stat is not exactly a real accurate representation here. And I think people are mostly getting carried away by Blizzard selecting quite unfortunate clips here, and they should have maybe focused on a few different aspects of the Paragon boards here. Another few interesting tidbits is also some stuff about PvP here in this video. So you can see, for example, first of all, the animations. When you fight other players in PvP, you can actually tell your animations or your teammates' animations apart from the enemies. So that's actually very important. You see this here, for example, everything that's enemy has like this kind of like red rose glow. See, like these are like enemy corpses basically from other players. And you see here, for example, the lightning stork effects being like the typical lightning blue. But you see here, this is from the opposite perspective, where you actually have these red effects as well. So this is actually a pretty nice feature, I believe, and quite important, even though it might go quite unnoticed. What is probably more interesting here is that you can actually farm items with PvP. So this is the gambling vendor, I guess, for these shards of hatred, I believe they're called. So this is the stuff they can farm in those PvP zones. And so far, it was actually not confirmed if we would be able to get actual loot from PvP. So we knew that there would be monsters and you can like find loot, but you can actually use those shards of hatred not only for the PvP transmogs, which are going to be like, you know, some transmog sets that are exclusive there, but also to actually gear up. This actually brought up a quite interesting question on stream where we were discussing like how abusable is the system. For example, can you actually fill up the entire like PvP zone with your friends, so to say? and just not fight each other, and you're just like farming, and maybe this is like a super great way of gearing up. So that remains to be seen. Also, like how feasible it actually is to fill up an entire zone with people that are not partied up, basically, because you can have only 4 people in a party, but up to 12 people in a zone. So this would mean 3 different parties that do not phase out from each other, basically. So that is actually quite interesting, and I hope that there's a system in place that prevents this from happening. But yeah, definitely a quite interesting tidbit here. So PvP might actually be a pretty viable strategy to gearing up your character. Here's also a short clip of the Wandering Death world boss. So this is the one we have seen not in the open beta, but in the previous, in the press beta. For example, we were able to fight this guy. Probably the coolest world boss in my opinion. He has some really nice abilities. And there's like this 3-second clip here or so where we see him quickly. With the release coming up and the focus being on the endgame now, we've also checked out this old developer interview here. This is on Wowhead right now. This was from December 2022. And there was like some meetup basically, and where they were discussing a few things about the endgame. So a lot of people seem concerned that like Diablo 4 will not really have enough things to do, and it's gonna get boring really fast because there's no content and these kind of things. There's actually this paragraph here that you basically start engaging with endgame systems at level 50. So this is basically once you have completed a campaign and you're out of the first difficulty, so you enter nightmare difficulty, and then you can start doing endgame stuff. And they said that it will need roughly 150 to 180 hours to reach level 100. Now, I believe this to be a very conservative estimate, and the blasters will do this multiple times faster. I think, first of all, this range is like laughably small already because just of the gap in, you know, players and players' performance. So this should be maybe something like 30 to 300 or so as like a more realistic, like, you know, time frame to catch most people, I guess. But yeah, I guess it will be way faster for people that try. 150 hours seems very excessive, even if that is the design intent for like the majority of people. So we're probably gonna see way faster times than this, especially if you watch my guides, so subscribe. But anyway, they also mentioned that based on the personal play style, the campaign will take between 35 to 45 hours. And again, I think that this variance is way too small, and this number is generally way too high. So if you look at what we were able to do in the open beta now with the Act 1 campaign, which is 1 out of 6 acts, and realistically one of the longer acts because you're slow and because like the introductory, you know, setup for the entire story. Yeah, you can do Act 1 in less than 1 hour if you're trying a little bit. So I'm not really sure where those extra 40 hours are supposed to be coming from. And also the in-game achievement like tally put Act 1 at like 27% of the campaign completion. So I would expect that later acts actually become shorter. This is usually a trend in these Diablo games anyway, especially the last act tends to be very short. So I would expect something similar again here. So what they probably mean with this 35 to 45 hours is like the time it takes you to play through the campaign and kind of just like, you know, zone out and go around and do some dungeons here and there, do like a whole world tour of exploration, and then maybe circle back to do another quest on the campaign, and then repeat that 5 times and until you're done basically. So this is kind of what I would expect a 45-hour playthrough to look like. Obviously, I expect not everyone to be like a mega blaster that wants to rush through the campaign, but I would not expect it to be anywhere close to that long if you focus only on the campaign, even if you're kind of slow. So my expected playthrough time would be somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 hours or so if you just follow the main quests. But to be fair, compared to other games, this is actually a fairly long campaign, so I think there's going to be a lot of stuff to see, and you only have to do it once, so if you don't like it, you can skip it the next time around. So that seems like a rather nice solution and a good length in my book. So somewhat related to that topic is also the level 100 boss that you are able to beat. So in the game's release, there will be this special boss at level 100 that doesn't have a leaderboard. That will come in Season 1, but you'll be able to fight this boss and, you know, kind of like, yeah, prove your worth, prove your strength or something like that. So I guess it's not going to be like the hardest thing to do because the Nightmare doesn't exist and they will probably go way further than this level 100 boss, but it's going to be some kind of like milestone to reach at least for people. So I guess it will be quite interesting to see like how hard this boss really is, if this is actually like a challenge, or if this is something that is like a pushover once you have reached level 100 or so. Who knows? So maybe it's going to be more about the leveling and not so much about trying to beat that boss. But for me, that will probably give like another nice milestone to reach when I'm like rushing on like launch basically. Personally, I was going to try to be the world first level 100 on hardcore. We'll see how that goes. And at least here we have like another kind of like a thing to put our sights on with maybe the first kill of this boss or something, if this is something kind of interesting. Or maybe like a first clear of like tier 100 nightmare dungeons or so, depending on how feasible that is. So these are kind of like the things that I'm aiming for right now, and let's see how that will go. And the last topic I want to cover here is the point of respeccing. So you might have seen this here in the Paragon preview, that the respeccing cost can actually be quite high. If you look at this here, 53k per Paragon point. So if you have 200 points of respec, that is like over 10 million gold. And if you have played the beta, you will know that this is quite a lot, at least for level 25 standards. So the high respec cost is something that has been a pretty hotly debated topic for a while. And the thing is that I think it sounds worse than it actually really is in my book. So there are a few points that I want to highlight here. So number one is, first of all, we don't even know how much gold you're going to get at level 100. So we do know that the gold that you get from monsters and from items, it scales up over time. So the higher level you are, the more you will find. So they have said that, for example, up to level 40 or so, they want it to be very, very affordable. And then on the way to level 100, it will get more expensive, but you will be able to respec at any point, as long as you have the gold. So a lot of people are saying that this is a bad system and they want to respec for free at any point. But realistically, it's just like a design choice, I guess. And it's probably not going to be so terrible. So number one is that, yeah, maybe you're not going to find a lot of gold in regular play, but there might be a lot of tricks available to get a lot of gold really fast. And we just need to find them. So this is like the first point, I guess, that if you really want to farm up a respec, you can probably do so relatively quickly. Number two is also that, at least personally, I like this kind of like growing with your character. So this is kind of the design intent here, I guess, that you play a certain build, you play like a certain like fantasy and you stick to it. And you're not really supposed to, you know, swap it around like in D3, where you had like this one character and like 7 different builds saved in the armory, one for T16, one for pushing this, one for pushing that, one for group. And you were just like always swapping it around all the time. Personally, I kind of like this more permanent system. It reminds me a lot more of PoE, where the character building is a lot more like central, and you kind of feel the progression as you go. And I like that system more than in Diablo 3, even though I'm someone who plays like 40 different builds every single season. And number three, one thing that a lot of people like to quote is this developer interview where they said that it might be a better solution to actually level a second character than to respec your main, because of the really high cost of respeccing. So while it does seem like a lot of gold here, with like, 10 million for the Paragons and then maybe like another few million for the skills, you don't really have to respec the entire tree every single time just to try out something else. Maybe you're going to swap out like 2 different skills, and maybe one supporting skill that's like 10 points on a skill tree or so, and this might be it. And maybe it's similar for the Paragons as well, where at least you can experiment with some stuff without actually redoing the entire thing from scratch. So there's also something to consider. So maybe you spend like 1 million, but not like 15 million, and you have an entirely new build by swapping around a few items. And also related to that is the fact that you actually level your second character, if you want to do that, way faster than your first. So first of all, you have access to all the codex powers, you have access to twink items, to gold, you have access to the higher gems, you have the renown unlocked, and you also get XP boosts from the battle pass itself. So this probably won't be in the game on launch because no season, but at least starting with season 1, I guess this battle pass system is going to kick in, and that will include certain power boosts as you unlock certain parts of the season journey, basically, and these kind of things. So we don't know exactly how that will work and how big that bonus is, but I think it's going to be pretty substantial, so that, for example, if your first character needs like, let's say 50 hours to reach a 100 if you're fast, maybe you can do it in 10 hours the next time, or in 5 hours even, or something like that. And this is also it for this video here. So I'm gonna be diving into more of these topics. Let me know what you want to see as well. And I want to highlight this live stream here that is going to take place on the 20th of April, including Riker actually. So that's pretty cool. They've teamed up with Riker here. And we've had a few of these live streams already. They are usually quite nice to watch, just like an hour or so. And they have that on Twitch and stuff. It's at 11 AM on the 20th of April. I'm going to be co-streaming that and reacting live to it on stream. So come hang out if you want. And obviously I'm going to have an upload for you guys discussing the findings afterwards. And as far as I'm aware, this is not the last one, so I think I want to make at least one more stream, probably right before launch or something, about seasons, and I believe battle pass and leaderboards and all that stuff. So this is probably what you're going to hear about as like the last topic before launch in June. So I hope you enjoyed this video, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next time.